Christians are not perfect. And anybody that tells you that they are is lying. Okay, they are lying, because just because you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior doesn't automatically just like make you perfect. And so in today's episode, we are going to talk about how to live this life beyond the church walls, how even though you go to church every Sunday, we're going to talk about how you can do this beyond the church walls. So welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus show, where we talk about all things living this life as Christians between you, me, and Jesus. Today, we're having a conversation about living the life beyond the church walls. Now, I also want to tell you that I'm making a change to the You, Me, and Jesus show. We're still talking about Jesus and all the things, but now you're going to experience more of my normal side, right? Meaning that we're going to talk about Jesus, talk all that type of stuff, but you're going to hear the sarcasm come out in this show more than you probably have before, because I felt like I was kind of stiff when I was doing this show. And so it felt boring for me. You know, I love talking about God, but I was like, my personality isn't as stiff as I have been being on the show. And I was just like, no, we're not doing that. So you're going to experience more of me and my humor as we navigate through the show together. So we're here on YouTube, and then we have a podcast on Spotify and Apple. And so hopefully you are enjoying watching or listening there. So I have my notes today as we talk about beyond the church walls and how Christians are not perfect. And I just want to talk to you about couple key points that I kind of wrote down as it pertains to how to live outside of the church walls, because we spend most of our time outside of church. And I think it's important that we really learn how to do it. We have to learn our own way based upon us, the way our DNA is, you know, our relationship with God, where we live, and things of that nature. And so I wrote down 5 things that I think we should talk about when it comes to living life beyond the church walls. And let me tell you the first one. So the first thing that I wrote down is that I want to talk to you all about how I found God in some of the most unexpected places. Okay. And when I wrote that down, I said to myself, what is it that people would want to know about finding God in unexpected places? Well, the time when I remember God being the most present, God being the most close to me, was when I was living in this studio apartment in Richmond, Virginia, when I found out my ex-husband was cheating. Okay. This studio apartment was $600 a month. Everything was included. And I was like, I can live. Like, I just need a place to just be safe from the world, safe from my ex, safe from the world, just safe. You know what I mean? And I was utilizing, you know, that place to just have a place to live. But also what happened to me in that time of my life is God became realer than I have ever experienced him before, than I have ever experienced him before. You know, like, I wasn't used to relying on somebody else to help pay my bills, or relying on someone to clothe me, you know, or to keep me safe. But during that time, I could barely function. I had to function. I had no choice, but I could barely function. And I remember losing a ton of weight because I was fasting like crazy for my marriage. Lost like 50 pounds, right? And I remember when I didn't have clothes and I went to go visit a friend and she took me shopping, right? I remember when I could barely clean my apartment. It wasn't gross, but it was I just could barely clean. And he sent somebody to inbox me on Facebook and say, hey, God wants me to clean your place. And when I came back, it was like I had never experienced that level of clean before in my life, you know? And there were just these nights when I would just cry and cry and cry and cry. And one day somebody messaged me on Facebook and said, look, I got this cat and I'm gonna have to take it to a shelter, but I thought about you. Do you want a cat? And I was like, I need a companion and I don't want to get a rebound man. I just don't do that. And I got this cat named Maui. I still have Maui. Maui is 11 years old. She's amazing. She might come up in here and like get on top of the desk because she's got this thing she's doing these days. And she was like the greatest companion during that time. I didn't run to men. I ran to my cat, you know? And I found God in a way that I had never experienced that level of closeness with God before until I was going through divorce and I couldn't depend on anybody else. I definitely couldn't depend on myself. And he showed up in a way that I will never, ever, ever forget. And it made me realize that the community of church is amazing. It's beautiful. It's necessary. But the depth of my relationship with God is not at church. The depth of my relationship with God is what happens when I leave the walls. Okay. And that changed my life, my perspective, the way that I operate with God forever. Okay. The second thing I wrote down here around today's show was the hilarious misadventures that taught me church isn't a building. Okay. I think that the whole world realized that the church wasn't necessarily a building when we all dealt with COVID-19. When that virus showed up, it was the devil. Okay. And we had no choice but to figure out how to do church at home, how to worship at home, pay tithes at home, how to build community at home, how to be close and pray with God at home, right? And I think that because we're back in church, we forget just how powerful our encounters were with God, and how close we were with him, how much time we were spending with him when we couldn't go to church, right? I am not saying don't go to church. I'm saying I think that we forget that when we couldn't go to a building, we still created something. We created community and small groups and these little things, right? And they were incredible. And I think that if we really reevaluated how we do church in the walls, we would say to ourselves, how can I do this again at home, right? Because our day-to-day life with God is way more important than our Sunday life with God, right? Because again, we may spend 3, 4, 5 hours at church or whatever your time is, but you're not spending nowhere near the time at church as you are outside, okay? Third thing I wrote down here about today's episode is finding sacred moments in your everyday chaos. So I think this one is a little bit harder because when things are chaotic, we're focusing on the chaos. We're not necessarily focusing on God and being connected to God. But one of the things that I am dealing with in this season is chaos. Now, let me explain. So my home life is peaceful. My work, it has its moments of chaos, but for the most part, it's calm. My mind is in chaos, right? And my mind is in chaos because I am dealing with a huge depreciation, like a very deep level of missing of estrogen, right? So normally the woman's body has like a big bucket of estrogen. And I had a surgery that I had no choice to have. I had no choice, right? And I went from having a bucket of estrogen to like maybe this much estrogen, right? And when that happens, it affects a lot of things, including the mind. And my mind at times is in chaos, and I'm trying to figure out, is this me? Is this the devil? Is this the estrogen thing? And most times it's the estrogen thing because I'm trying to get myself back to a place where I'm okay again, you know? And I have these moments where I'm like, and I have to just pause and say, hey, you are okay. Like, you're not having a psychotic break. You don't need meds. Like, it's not a personality disorder, so to speak. This is an estrogen thing. You are okay. What can you focus on right now? And I have to talk to myself about that. I have to tell myself that. And I go, God, if you could just help me here. And in the times when I've been trying to figure out what's going on with me, he will say, hey, talk to your doctor about increasing your dosage of estrogen. And I would say, okay, right? Because this one time I had this like a thought of not being here anymore. I can't say the S word. And I was like, whoa, I don't think like that. And I heard, you're missing estrogen. It's messing with your mood. It's causing some issues with your brain. And I was like, oh, okay. So then we increased it. And so now we're just constantly increasing it until we're at the right spot with me, you know? And it's a journey. And so in the chaos of getting my body back to normal, I'm having to just have these little moments where I just go, God, thank you. We're okay. And he brings me to a place of peace where I'm okay, right? Or if I'm at church, church is loud and wild. And sometimes I can't focus and I just have to close my eyes and say, you're in here. He go, yep, I'm in here. And I could just feel his peace and I just go, okay. And I just sit there, even while it's wild and loud. And I just go, yeah, we're okay. Thank you. And I just let him come and touch me and be with me in that moment, in that chaotic environment, but also in my own chaos as I get myself back to the estrogen level that I need to be even close to normal. Okay. Fourth thing I wrote down here about beyond the church walls is why your messy faith journey might be exactly what God intended. So when I wrote that down, I said, everybody has a messy life. I don't care how perfect you try to make that thing. I don't care if you work with the home edit team or if Iyanla came to fix your life is messy. It just is, because life isn't perfect. Listen, because if you're trying to control everything, you're messy. If you're not controlling anything, you're messy. If you got a brother, sister, uncle, cousin, messy. If you got a partner, messy. If you got kids or animals, messy. Why? Because you're dealing with humans, and that's okay, right? But what I've learned about the mess is that God, he's not in perfection. He's in the mess, because in the mess is when we need him. Like, I need him in all of the stuff that is happening in my life. I need him. And if I didn't have the mess, then I would feel like I didn't need him. You know what I'm saying? And I think that when we invite God into like these messy, chaotic places and we watch him when he makes this right and he makes this right and then he makes these little things right, we watch the supernatural power of God show up. You know, that 2020 was so messy. Oh my, it was so messy beyond what we have ever experienced. But there's some of the most beautiful things happened in 2020. You know, some of the most beautiful things happened in 2020. Some really bad things happened. Don't get me wrong. But some really beautiful things happened in 2020. And some of them was families coming together. Some of them was people who had never talked to God, talking to him, people coming back to God. There were people who, it's one like white lady, she told me, she was like, I went to my daughter's room and I realized my daughter does not have a black doll, like zero. And she was in shock that she's never chosen to give her daughter a black or brown doll. And she was like, this is a me issue. It's not my daughter issue. And so she started bringing her daughter brown, black, and all types of dolls. Now, what does that do? It sounds really small, but if you're teaching your kid about just white and you're not teaching them about us, then the kid got programmed to just white. But when she's reprogramming her, how this is beauty and this is beauty and this is a great doll, this is a great doll, it shapes that little girl's life forever, because it was shaped with how the world is and not the bubble that her mom had her in unintentionally. Messy, but God can come in and do so much. Okay. The fifth thing is releasing the guilt of not fitting the perfect Christian mold. So I used to deal with the knowing that I'm not the person that sits on the front row on Sundays, wears the long skirt, wears the hat, is the pastor's wife. That is how you typically expect the pastor's wife to be. I'm just not like that. I'm not the person who loves being in church and minister in church. I can't stand it. I like business and marketing. I love that stuff. And I like people who don't just say Jesus is going to do it. I hate that. I like the person that says, I'm going to partner with God on this. I'm going to ask him what I should do, and I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to believe him that he's going to do his. That's my person. People who always pray everything and don't do anything, I can't stand them. We can be friends, but we can't. I don't do mentoring with people like that, because you're going to do the same thing over and over again, and you're going to frustrate me, and it's not going to help our relationship. I'm not friends with people who won't make moves. I can't do it. I need you to pray and trust God and move. Otherwise, you're going to frustrate me, because you're going to keep complaining to me over and over and over again about the same thing, and God is waiting for you to move, right? And because I know that about myself, it took me a while to accept that this is who and how I am, right? This is who and how I am, and this is a perfect Christian, quote unquote, because it's just me being me. And when I started to accept that, I started to project that. And I started to project it to people of that you don't have to look like her, be like her. You get to figure out who you are and talk to God about that person. Let him smooth out the rough edges, and then you get to go be that on purpose. And when I started to say those types of things and watch people live that out, it was like, yes, this is what that is. Because there's a perfect person that's called to be that's called to XYZ, that's called to, yes, but there's other people who ain't called to do and be like that. And if everybody's trying to fit this little cookie cutter thing, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're not living our best life with God. We're living somebody else's life, and that's a mess. Nobody enjoys that. God don't enjoy it, and we don't either. And so when we talk about living this life outside of the church walls, it looks like figuring out who you are according to God and being that on purpose. Letting him smooth you out, letting him clean anything up needs to be cleaned up, letting him perfect you, not perfect, but go through the process with him, and just watching your life be what you always hoped it would be with God as who you are. Because if I was sitting here acting like my name is Pastor Bill Johnson from Reading Church, you would be asleep. Because I would be asleep. That's not me. That's him. Beautiful, right? Love him, right? And if I was trying to be a Sophia Ruffin, love Sophia, but I ain't her. And if Sophia was trying to be me, she'd be miserable, because we ain't each other. She is her and I am me. And you are you. Okay? So if you didn't get anything from this episode, I want you to get this one thing. Release the guilt of not fitting to be the perfect Christian. It's never going to happen. Okay? If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe here to the channel. I got more messy stuff coming out every Sunday as we love God with you, me, and Jesus together.